Good morning. It's so good to see all of you here today. If we have not met, my name is Kathleen. Like Ben said, I'm one of the pastors here. I'm so excited for this day. This is actually one of my favorite things that we do together, to pack the 40,000. That's a lot, y'all, right? 40,000. 40,000 meals together, and it's cool because it's a way where we can tangibly be the church that God is asking us to be, and so I love doing that. And so I'm just here to give us a little vision of like, why are we doing this? What is the purpose? Why are we here today doing this service project? And a big reason, right, we get to be the church and we get to show the love of Jesus through doing this. And it fits in with the larger series we've been doing about our 6 pillars of spiritual formation. And this one specifically, we're joining in God's mission. How do we as the church join in on God's mission? And while I was thinking about this, I was thinking about my husband Mike and I. We recently went to Spain for the first time, which was really cool. We'd never been to Europe before, and we got to go, and it was actually really amazing having never been to Europe, to see just all of the history, the buildings that were centuries old, just to stare out at the Mediterranean Sea for the first time and be like, wow, like thousands of years of human history have happened around this sea. It was really mind-blowing to me because I was just staring out at the sea, and I felt very small and insignificant in a humbling way, just my small piece in the thousands of years of human history, of God's story that's been written. And whenever I travel, I'm reminded how big the world is. I'm reminded that there's billions and billions of people living their own lives, going through their own struggles, and billions of people that are loved deeply by God, walking through their story, walking through his story. And I think this happens every time we travel outside of our own orbit, right? You don't have to go to Europe for this to happen. You can just travel a couple hours in any direction, and you're reminded, wow, there's this world outside of Fairfield or Westchester County where all these things are happening, and God is working in all sorts of ways through all sorts of different people. And I think that this also happens to us when we serve. We're forced to take a moment and step back from our own lived experience and think about how another person is experiencing the world. And I think it's so important for us to take the time to do that. And Jesus, in the book of Matthew, he tries to help the people he's talking to see this world outside of their own experience through serving. And to help me talk about this, Abby is going to come up and read the first part of my Matthew passage. Where's Abby? I can't see. Abby, thank you. So before Abby reads, you're going to read into that microphone for us. But before you read, Abby, there's sometimes when we're in TK, I like to make sure we're looking for the main point, right? And so I want us to look as we talk through this passage and as I talk, why do we serve? That's the question we're trying to answer today. So Abby, would you read this for us?
Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you. So some context for this passage. So Jesus here, he's talking to a group of people. He's telling a story of a king who has divided his people into 2 groups, into the sheep and the goats. And that sounds a little funny. People are people. They are not sheep or goats. But it's a metaphor for the people who, the sheep were loving. Actually, it's this way. They were on his right. The sheep were loving and serving God well, and the goats were not. And so the sheep this king who represents Jesus, he told the people that they had taken care of him in his time of need. In fact, they'd taken really good care of him in his hunger, his thirst, his lack of shelter, his lack of clothes, in sickness, in difficult times. But the people who he's saying, you did all this for me, they had an interesting response, and Eliana is going to read what they said. You can come up. Eliana.
The righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you as a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?
Thank you, Eliana. So Jesus was like, you did all these things for me, and the people were like, I do not remember, Jesus, ever doing that, right? Ella, you want to come here for a second? You want to be my example? Yes, you. Ella. Ella, right? It'd be like if I was like, Ella, thank you so much for giving me all of that pizza the other day. Do you remember doing that? Yes. No. The answer no. Ella, thank you so much for giving me your cowboy boots last week. I was so thankful for that. Do you remember doing that? No. She's like, what are you talking about, Kathleen? Like, have you lost your mind? Ella, thank you. Remember when I was sick and you came and you brought me chicken soup? No. She's like, what are you talking about? Thank you, Ella. She's more confused. She's like, right? That was their face. Ella was a perfect example of like, you're saying these things, and I don't know what you're talking about. So they were confused, right? They didn't understand. It didn't make sense to them, right? What Jesus was saying. They were like, Jesus, we never saw you. Like, I don't understand. And so, but Jesus, he was trying to make a point about the way that we see people in need. And so Ava and Jude are going to come help me with a little illustration. Ava and Jude, come here. They're going to help me with a little illustration. Right, I have here what seems to be a shiny black piece of paper. Can you verify this is a shiny black piece of paper? Mm-hmm. You can verify, thank you, right? But there's something pretty cool underneath it. Will you guys take these pencils and scratch and see what happens? Scratch on that side. There you go, yeah, angle it like that, there you go. What's underneath there?
A rainbow.
A rainbow, a beautiful picture is underneath when you scratch it away. So while they keep scratching off this, Lily's gonna read our last verse for us. Amazing, thank you, Lily. Look, so this isn't boring black anymore, right? It's a beautiful color, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, I think we're good on the scratching. We got it. Yeah. Can I have the pencil back? Thank you. Thank you, Ava and Jude. So Jesus, he said, whenever you fed someone, whenever you gave someone water, whenever you allowed someone to stay in your house, whenever you cared for someone who was in jail, you were caring for me, you were caring for Jesus himself. And he said that those people are the ones that loved and served God well, those that took good care of the most vulnerable. Because Jesus, he invited the people to look beyond what they were seeing right in front of them and asked people to have a whole new perspective about the beautiful thing that was underneath the surface of every person. Just like this paper that seemed insignificant transformed into something glowing and radiant, so too inside every person is the image of God. Every person reflects the image of God. And Jesus, he showed in this passage, he cares about individual people. When you saw that person, you fed them. When you saw that person that was sick, you took care of them. Right? He wants us to zoom out and see the whole wide world. Like I was talking about traveling, zooming out. He wants us to see the big picture of the whole world of the people who need help and God's beautiful creation. But as we zoom out and we see that, he wants us to zoom back in to the individual person who's right in front of us and care for those people that have the image of God inside of them, that are part of God's creation. And I think about this passage that's so interesting to me, is that Jesus doesn't say, for I was hungry and you said, see you at church, right? I was sick and you said, I'll pray for you when I get home, right? I was a stranger and you said, well, join that Bible study over there. And I'm not discounting inviting people to church or praying for them later or sending them to Bible studies, but I just think it's significant that Jesus said, in that moment, there was a need and you met it, right? He was meeting their physical needs and there was a sense of urgency. It was, I was hungry and bam, you fed me. I was sick and bam, you took care of me. I was a stranger and in that moment you said, come on in, into my house. And this idea that Jesus presented was really radical for his audience. To say that those that took care of the least important people in society and cared for their immediate needs were the ones to go to heaven and live with God was very surprising, right? When the people heard this, they weren't inspired to go out and serve others. They weren't like, yeah, great job, Jesus. No, actually, Jesus says all of this, and the passage immediately following this is the last straw when they decide that Jesus has to die. That's when they make the final decision and plot to kill Jesus just a few days later. This radical idea that we should serve and love and care for the least of these as if they were Jesus himself. And so I just come back to this question I started at the beginning. Why do we serve? We serve because Jesus calls attention to it, and it says it's important. We serve because Jesus says that those that love and serve God well, love and serve others. But the last thing that I haven't gotten to yet, we serve because Jesus first served us. In 1 John chapter 4:19, it says, we love because what? He first loved us. We love because he first loved us. We serve because he first served us. Jesus saw our immense need for him, and he came down to earth, and he showed us what it means to be a servant, and then showed the ultimate act of love and service on the cross. It's something we could never repay. And so we serve and we love because he served and he loved first. And packing this food, it's one way to do it. It's one way to serve and love others because he served and loved us. But I want to encourage us today to not just do this activity, but to think, how can we show care and compassion for those we encounter in our everyday lives, those that Jesus himself is reflected in? Where in our schools, at our jobs, on our teams, at our playgrounds, in our communities, can we find the places to show people the radical love? And this is for everyone, right? Kids, this is not just for the grown-ups. This is something you can do in your everyday lives. And grown-ups, it's not just for the kids, right? This is for all of us to do together. And so I'm going to invite the band to come back up, and we're going to transition. We're going to take communion together and center ourselves on Jesus so that we can get to work. So